Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching Disruptive Investing. And we're going to be talking to the CEO and founder of CyberLandr, Lance King, about CyberLandr, because now not only can you put your money down on one, but you might want to invest in the company. Now, before we get to the video, I just want to tell you some late breaking news that just happened. That's why we're wearing different clothes here. YouTube reached out to us and said that they've demonetized the channel. We don't know exactly why. Do you remember why?
Our channel doesn't follow the community guidelines. I don't know what the hell that means. We've been trying to get in touch with YouTube, trying to fix this matter, but the one reason why we're able to continue and we haven't just fired everyone who works for us is because of our Patreons.
Yeah.
I really, really want to thank you, everyone who supports us over on Patreon. This video is coming out because of you. There is no other way that this video would come out. It wouldn't make any financial sense for us.
Well, and this shows that we're independent creators. We're putting out independent news, and the powers that be, do they not want to hear this? Is that why we're being shut down? And this is why you are so important. Without you, this independent news channel gets shut down, I guess.
So please enjoy this interview and go thank our Patreon supporters in the comments below. And if you want to be one of those amazing people, you can help support us over on patreon.com/nowyouknow.
Yeah, we have a lot of great perks over there. One of those is our investor club, where you can join over 1,800 members who get to talk to Lance. I mean, we're going to have a meeting with Lance, and you could be one of them. So go join us there if you want to support great news, but also get a chance to hear from CEOs. Well, great, Lance. Thank you so much for being with us today. For those viewers who are watching who may not remember what CyberLandr is, could you give us just a quick recap?
Yeah, first of all, thanks, Zach and Jesse, for having me back on. CyberLandr is the disappearing camper for the Tesla Cybertruck. It's really obvious the Cybertruck is not a traditional pickup truck, and so a traditional pickup camper won't fit in it. So we thought it would be a great idea to create a camper with no aerodynamic drag, because aerodynamic drag really reduces your range in an electric pickup truck.
And so you've caught a lot of people's imaginations, because a lot of people seem to have put in their orders. What are your order numbers up to?
What we've shared officially is, I think we're over 2,000, but in truth, we're well over 2,200 now, and the orders are climbing quickly. In fact, I can give you a little bit of an update later when we talk about our last press release and the Start Engine campaign.
Okay, that's exciting. So we talked to you last year. You were just had announced this. What has changed since last year? You've had more time. And so, yeah, tell us what you've been up to.
So we have been working around the clock. I have a very tired team, but we're super excited because we've made so much progress in such a short period of time. So we have built multiple prototypes, and we just had our latest prototype up to Monroe and Associates in Michigan. That was part of our first 3,000-mile field trip, and we put it on our traditional pickup because we don't have a Cybertruck to work with yet. So we purchased a flatbed pickup, since CyberLandr won't fit in a traditional pickup since they have fender wells and the Cybertruck doesn't. And we hauled it up to Michigan and back and let the team up at Monroe look at our progress, and they were very complimentary. They said we've made more progress in 4 months than most large companies can make in a year, which we felt really good about.
That's really exciting. I mean, a lot of times you bring in Sandy Monroe's company when you're ready for production. It sounds like you brought them in even earlier than that, kind of to show them off the prototype. Now, last time we talked, you had a prototype in your garage. Is this the same prototype, or is this steps beyond that?
New prototypes. We've got a new R&D center here in Austin, and it took us a while to find the right space and to get moved in and to get the equipment and tools we needed in, but they're in now, and it's allowing us to really accelerate our prototype development. So this is yet another new prototype, and we'll have another one that we've already started that we're kind of working on in parallel. One of the things we found with the supply chain challenges and the logistics challenges today is things aren't coming in quite as fast as we'd like. And so the way we're making up for that, so it doesn't delay us, is we're doing multiple prototypes in parallel. And so we can make progress, even if there are delays.
Now, I want to get back to Sandy Monroe in a second, but again, for our viewers who don't know exactly what's in this camper, can you walk us through some of the features?
You bet. We like to say that it lets you take your kitchen, living room, bedroom, bathroom, and office with you anywhere and everywhere you go. And really, that's a complete paradigm shift. Over the last 25 years, you've probably noticed the trend of people moving from sedans to SUVs. And the reason for that is because SUVs can go more places and do more things. And for those exact same reasons, we think people will want to move into things like CyberLandr, a lifestyle vehicle. In 20 years ago, a telephone made a phone call. Now you wouldn't even consider a telephone that only made a phone call. And we think 10 years from now, you wouldn't consider a car that only went from point A to point B. You will expect much more of it. And so by being able to bring, in essence, a tiny home with you everywhere you go, it really does change your lifestyle, and it changes how you use it. Our customers tell us that camping is actually one of the less frequent uses they're going to have for it. In fact, some don't plan to ever camp at all with it, but they want to have the capability when they take the kids to a sports event or match where there's some downtime in between, place to get out of the sun, take a break, have a snack. Other people say, hey, I want to take it to the lake or the beach and be able to shower and get cleaned up after so I can go right into town and have dinner with someone without having to drive back home and clean up. And other people are saying, it's great after the bike ride up the canyon to get a shower and stop by and get some takeout and eat it while it's still hot inside the Cyberlander before completing the drive home. Or just pulling off the traffic. We've had a lot of people in places with lots of traffic say, hey, when there's a big traffic problem, I can just pull off the road and get some work done with the satellite internet and the computer sitting in the back. And so we're seeing lots of new uses for it. In fact, our customers have identified dozens of uses we hadn't even thought of.
I think what astounded me was that in addition to beds, it has a shower, it has a sink, it has a toilet, it has like you said, everything you would need. It doesn't look like it could possibly fit in there. I mean, how did you figure out how to fit all this stuff in there? Because not only that, it then, as you pointed out, goes down.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, actually. I had this outlandish idea that we really needed pickup campers that were much more aerodynamic. In fact, RVs in general that were more aerodynamic as we transitioned to sustainable transportation. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be awesome if you could actually fit a camper within the Cybertruck's vault? And since I had already reserved a Cybertruck for myself, it was kind of a needful thing for me. And so as I thought about it, I wonder if you could make that work. And so I started doing some sketches, taking some measurements, putting some tape out on the floor, and I thought this might just actually work. So the next step was to make a mock-up of it out of just foam board and see if you could really occupy that space and if it would work. And I was surprised and how well it really worked. And it's been really gratifying. So far, everybody that's gotten into it has said the exact same thing. Wow, it's bigger than I imagined. And that's just fascinating to me because it's a small space, but we've used it very well. In traditional campers, you have the challenge of the sink and kitchen is right in the middle of the hallway. So you can't get to the dinette set or the bed or to the bathroom without bumping into the person that's sitting there trying to cook dinner or wash dishes or something. And with our layout, the sink is off in the corner out of the way so people can come in, they can get to the refrigerator, they can sit in the seats, they can move around, get into the bathroom and never run into each other. And then instead of having cupboards right in your face because we're telescopic and it has to go up and down, there are no cupboards there. And so you've got windows on two levels. So whether you're seated or standing, you've got great visibility. And because the ceiling is angled, there's a lot of headroom.
So, I mean, this is kind of like the Swiss Army knife of campers. So you have all these features, including the kitchen sink, and we haven't seen the final design of the Cybertruck, and we don't know if it's going to have, that sub trunk that they talked about in the initial presentation. We've seen some some shots here and there of this newer prototype, the one with the windshield wiper. That obviously doesn't affect your design, but I haven't seen the sub trunk. Is that going to be a problem if, how are you going to be able to do water if they, the dimensions aren't going to work out for you?
So we have a plan for that. You always want to have contingency plans. And so we have contingency plans based on if the width changes, if the length changes, if the sub-trunk isn't there. We've gone through just about every imaginable scenario and planned for it. And that prompted some design changes that we think have made Cyberlander even better than what we showed before.
So let's talk about, you brought it up to Sandy Monroe. Is there anything you can share with us? You said he was excited. Did he give you any new ideas that you hadn't thought of or any suggestions that would make it better?
Monroe and team are always great about that. And, you mentioned that a lot of people go there once they've produced a product and want to do better. And it's kind of interesting. We actually talked with with Mark Ellis and the Monroe team even before we launched on April 6th of last year, because we wanted to benefit from their knowledge and get it right the first time rather than having to go back and fix it later. And they told us how remarkable that was, that most people waited until they'd been in production for a while and couldn't figure out how to make it profitably before they talked to them. But the very reason Monroe and Associates exist is because they realized early on that only 5% of the money for a product is spent in the design phase. That has a 70% influence on the cost and the quality down the road. So really, it's always best if you start with them early on. And they've been very complimentary. They pulled me aside this time and said, "You got some fantastic engineers." And we really do. We have some amazing engineers that are working around the clock. And one of the things that makes them so amazing is that they're open to new ideas and they don't get ego invested. And so they're able to take feedback and work with it. And so is the Monroe team. So it's really been a fantastic collaboration with them. We really enjoy that relationship.
Now, Jesse kind of mentioned, I think, the elephant in the room, which is you can't really nail down the final design until you've got, I think, your hands on a Cybertruck, or at least the really good dimensions. And then Elon just, pushed it back a little bit, right? So we think, we hope early 2023, maybe sandbagging, maybe later this year. First of all, when do you think you can get your hands on a Cybertruck?
Great question. We don't know. In our discussions with Monroe, we've talked about a couple of scenarios. The scenario where we get specifications up front and have plenty of lead time for tooling and that drives some decisions on materials and manufacturing techniques. And then we've also looked at if we don't get specifications until it ships, let's say we have to wait until they produce one to get measurements. We have a plan for dealing with that that uses different materials and different manufacturing techniques that allow us to adapt very, very quickly within a couple of weeks to build to those new dimensions. Those dimensions can change, but they're not going to change dramatically. We're not going to get a 4-foot bed instead of a 6 or 6.5 foot bed, right? So there's a relevant range both for width and length. And so we've designed to work within that.
Now, Jesse and I are, I think, number 20 on the list, and I think we'll pick it up in Austin, and you're in Austin. And this kind of leads to the next part of my question, which is you have a Start Engine. You guys are doing a crowdfund round right now. Jesse and I are very interested in startup companies that are innovative, and yours certainly is. So before we go any further, I would love to have you on a call with our Now You Know Investor Club, where we talk to people like you a lot. And we've got 1,800 members who might be interested in this crowdfund. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And maybe even, maybe we should decide if we invest in the company, because we could probably help you out a lot.
Absolutely.
So right now, what I see as of the recording of this is you have about $500,000 raised, which is great. It looks like about over 200 investors. It seems like there's an offering max of $5 million. This would be a $400 million valuation, and that's something I do want to get into with you a little bit. This would be common stock valued at $40 a share. So I think for a lot of people watching, they're like, well, I know the stock market. I invested in Tesla. This isn't on an open market, right? This is a private round. And so I guess one big question I think a lot of private investors might be wondering about is, okay, so $40 a share, does that mean I can just sell the stock if I want to?
So as you mentioned, it's not a publicly traded market, right? It's still a private stock. And that's one of the reasons we chose Start Engine. Start Engine does give you some flexibility. They also bring with them potentially more investors. So we were off to a very quick start on Start Engine. We were really pleased with that. That we very quickly climbed to $500,000. Interestingly enough, we put out a press release announcing that we had hit 100 million in orders and that we were available on Start Engine for people who wanted to invest early in a startup company. And, we very quickly went to $500,000 on Start Engine, in spite of the fact that it was during the holidays and the stock market hasn't been doing great lately. And we were pleased with that. But even more impressive to us was we very quickly got $5 million in new orders off that same press release. So we're doing about 10-to-1 sales to investment so far.
And that probably explains how you can value the company, I'm guessing, at $400 million, which is, you have a lot of orders, that's great. For, a lot of companies, the big problem is, we got to get the word out about this product and we don't have, the customer base yet. It looks like if you can deliver, you have a big potential customer base.
Thank you. Yeah, we have thousands of customers already. And, people say, wow, that is a sky high valuation until they run the numbers. And, we've had some people comment on social media, wow, that's a really high valuation. And yet we've not had anyone, and most of those people commenting will admit that they don't have expertise in valuing startups, right? But we've talked to lots of people who do have expertise, and Start Engine itself sees dozens, if not hundreds of startups a year. And they had no issue with it either, because it's simply 4 times orders, which is a pretty conservative valuation, really, for a hot product in a fast-growing industry with a lot of potential. And so it's a big number, but part of that's because we're used to seeing products that are maybe $500 on Start Engine, right? So when they've got 2,000 orders, they've got a valuation of maybe $4 million. Well, add a couple of zeros onto the back of that $500 to get to the roughly $50,000 price of the Cyberlander, and your valuation goes up to $400 million. So it's a big number, but it's not an outlandish number. It's just the way math works.
So it seems like you got a product that people want, but we're stuck, I think, at least with investors and myself and Jesse, we know that the next stage of the company is going to be one of the most daunting, right? I mean, Sandy pointed this out, right? A lot of your money is going to go into the next phase, which is production. What are your plans for production? Tell us what you can about what your thoughts are. Are you going to outsource this to China? Are you going to make it there in Texas? How are you going to do it?
So we're going to make it in Texas. And, people ask us, well, why are you doing it yourself? Why not use one of the other RV manufacturers? And the reason for that was pretty simple. We wanted to build a new type of RV that's using more modern techniques, more modern materials, something more durable, less maintenance, and higher quality. And so we couldn't identify anybody that had the expertise with the correct materials or the manufacturing to meet our needs. And then we didn't want to give away trade secrets in our manufacturing process, which we have quite a few of. So we have 5 patents issued already, and 3 pending, and more being filed right away that cover all kinds of aspects, from our software to the way the Cyberlander moves up and down, to some of the control mechanisms, to some other things that I can't talk about yet. We felt it was important to get it done right, and that it would have been absolutely as much work for us to help somebody else do it as it would to do it ourselves, but it would take longer. That's why we engaged with Monroe so early on. Monroe has helped with the layout of the manufacturing facility and sizing of it, and the capacity for how many we can build. And they go to levels of detail that even surprised me. It takes 1.5 seconds for someone to pick up the washer and put it on the nut. And they know that. And so that's calculated in to what they've done for us to get to those capacity estimates and things. So it's been great to work with them. We've had some manufacturing experience on our own in the past, but we don't have the kind of manufacturing experience that Monroe and Associates have, which is why we engaged with them.
So in terms of features, when you announced the Cyberlander, it had a lot of features. It had, I'm just going to try and go through as many as I can here. Solar panels. It had a full water system complete with shower. You could dump in just kind of questionable water and it would filter it for you.
Dimming windows,
air conditioning,
stairs in the back,
fold out stairs, security system,
the bed,
voice activated systems. It seemed like a heck of a lot. Have you rolled back on any of these features, or are you plowing ahead with new features, or is it a balance of both?
We think people are going to be really pleased that what makes it to production is surprisingly close to what we originally announced. We've not wanted to compromise on that as we've done our customer focus groups and gotten feedback from our many customers. They've been adamant that they really like it the way it is, that it inspires them, and they like the approach. They like being able to control it with an app instead of having lots of little control panels on the wall. And they really like some of those tech features. And So we have wanted to make sure we keep it true to that original vision as possible. And I think you'll find that there have been very few compromises and some areas where there's been some improvement and some synergy.
Are there any features you can talk about where, as you started to go from just computer generated, sync or something, and you started to actually get supplies and parts where you're like, oh, this is harder than we thought, or this is easier than we thought, or, any stories like that?
Quite a few of them, actually. One in particular is the lifting mechanism for Cyberlander. I've read some comments in social media, oh, that's easy. You can get linear actuators anywhere to do that. And it's like, wow, if you can find them, let us know. We've worked with companies all over the world and have done multiple prototypes of different systems and then ended up really developing our own that is a mix of two existing technologies that have not really been paired in the past. And they're both proven technologies. They work well together, and we'll be applying for one or more patents on that as well. So I can't really get into the details. But we look at those things as an opportunity. Those kinds of challenges are what will set us apart from a lot of other companies. Is we like a good engineering challenge, and we find it's a great way to add some value and set ourselves apart.
We got a lot of questions after our last video with you about how do you get this in and out of the Cybertruck? Have you worked on a way to do that, or will this be like once it's in, it's in?
I've been surprised how many people have told us they never intend to pull it out. But we also know there are lots of people who buy a truck because they want to use it as a truck, right? They want to throw plywood in it on the weekend or a load of manure or whatever. We've been working with focus groups on a number of different ways to do it. Some people had hoped they could lift it up in their garage so that it would be up out of the way and they could still pull in and out. And we found that only a small percentage of people have a garage with a high enough ceiling and a strong enough roof that they could actually lift it up. We've looked at some other ones. I don't think we're ready to announce one yet, but I think we've settled on one that people will like, that will be pretty convenient to use.
So Lance, another question we got from a lot of our viewers was about your team. They're like, okay, how are like three guys in a garage going to pull this off? Can you tell us about your engineer team?
Yeah, well, it's not three guys in a garage anymore. The team's grown quite a bit. We've got a handful of people in software and AI. We've got a handful of engineers on staff, more than full-time. I'm sure they'd love to get down to just full-time work. And then we've got a number of contract developers, programmers, engineers, covering everything from electrical engineering to computer design, that kind of thing. I think people will be pleased. It's not a backyard effort. It's a full-blown custom effort. It's unlike anything we've really seen in the RV industry before in terms of the engineering that's going into it.
Now, one of the things that you had mentioned is that you weren't going to be going to, your typical RV manufacturers. And that kind of reminded me of the very recent announcements from Winnebago and Airstream. Days apart from each other, they both announced different kind of concepts. Totally not, Cyberlander style. But the one thing that really stood out to me was that lack of software. They had screens on there, and of course,
one of them looked pretty clunky.
One of them looked pretty old-fashioned UI kind of thing. So I do see the advantage of being able to control stuff with an app or have it be voice enabled. And the extent to the tech that they had in there was colored lights, RGB LEDs. Those are very popular. I want to kind of talk about some of the ideas that you're thinking in terms of being able to use an app to control your Cyberlander or voice controls. Like, what are some of the things that I think people might not be considering when you're going to be living in this or camping in this or showering in this?
Well, our goal was to have it not feel like a leap 50 years back in time when you walked from the cab of your Cybertruck back to the Cyberlander, which is really the effect you get going from most pickups today to the camper itself. We wanted it to be, a natural experience. Tesla owners are used to an app that controls the functions of the vehicle, and we wanted that to continue. So we wanted to give them the convenience of being able to deploy and store it with a single tap on the app. Be able to control the lights, monitor the water level, the power level from that one app, rather than trying to learn a different interface for each of those different control panels. And, you know, frankly, we had no place to put those control panels anyway because it'd shear off as the wall goes up and down. The basic things you can probably guess. We'll continue to add new features through over-the-air updates over time. So just like the Teslas, it will become even better the longer you own it, and you'll continue to get nice surprises.
Now, will this funding round get you all the way through production for your first customer orders, or do you think you're going to need another round to get you there?
No, the crowdfunding round won't even get close. Manufacturing is not inexpensive, and it's not easy, and we understand that. The crowdfunding round was simply because so many of our customers and enthusiasts had said, oh, please give us a chance to get in early. You know, because so often you can't get in until a company goes public. And they saw potential in what we were doing and wanted to be part of it from early on. And so that's really why we did the crowdfunding campaign. You know, our regulation CF or crowdfunding round is limited to $5 million. And so, you know, we really can't generate enough capital with that to get all the way through to production. And so we are exploring lots of other avenues. Of course, I can't talk about any of those. All of them take longer than you think they should take, but we're confident, given the orders and the conversations we're having, that we'll have the money we need to do it and to do it right.
Now, if we look long-term for your company, are you envisioning that this product, the CyberLandr product, will be pretty much it, or do you have visions for other products down the road?
We're really focused on CyberLandr today, but we will not be a one-product company. We think there are lots of other great innovations we can bring to this industry over time.
I was surprised to see that the Ford F-150, the Silverado EV have over 100,000 pre-orders right now. Is there any thought to having a CyberLandr version for those trucks as well?
We've had lots of requests for CyberLanders for the various trucks. And we're not saying no, but we're focused fully on the Cybertruck for now. And we'll see what the future holds for those other electric trucks. There are some challenges in that most of them have even shorter beds. One woman had said, hey, could I get a CyberLandr for a Hummer EV? And I said, well, it depends if you're under 5 feet tall or not, because it has a 4.5-foot bed. And so there are challenges, right? It would require significant engineering effort, and if the demand is there, we'll look at it. But with the Cybertruck, since no existing camper will work with it, it really gave us a great opportunity. And, you know, with their high-tech approach to things and their focus on making things easy for the user, we thought that was a great way to launch.
What are your thoughts on either having a pullable trailer? I mean, I definitely can see some of this technology still benefiting electric vehicles if it's a pulled trailer that can pop up in the same way with a lot of the same technologies. Is that stuff that you're dreaming about? Not considering right now, obviously, you have a lot of on your plate, but when you're, laying in bed at night, are you thinking of pullable trailers and other RV stuff?
Absolutely.
Starlink, I want to talk about that. I think that Starlink opens up so many more possibilities for CyberLandr, because normally you'd say, well, where are you going to plug it into, for the internet? But now that we've got a new version of Starlink coming out with even more bandwidth, I see in your literature that it says something about Starlink, but is that something that I'll be attaching separately, or is that something you're going to integrate?
We're not ready to disclose that yet. We're still looking at the possibilities that the new smaller antenna is much easier to package than the original one. But we don't want to commit until we can get our hands on one. And I'm told I'll have one in the next few months. So hopefully that's the case, so that we can incorporate that in. But yeah, it really does change things, doesn't it?
Now, for people who are watching who are seeing this fully extended behind you, they may not understand. It sounds like with an app or a voice command that it collapses and that it goes up and down. Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
So with the touch of a button in the app, it expands out and then, of course, can collapse back down in.
And now the solar panels, that's really cool. So is there going to be a battery in there? Are you going to use the Cybertruck battery? How's this solar panel get integrated into CyberLandr?
The details of that we don't know yet because Tesla hasn't disclosed them. What we do know is Tesla has said that they will have bidirectional power on the Cybertruck. So you'll be able to put power in and take power out. The interface for doing that, we're unsure of at this point. So that's one of the details we'll have to work out closer to shipping time. But we are not adding our own batteries. It doesn't make any sense at all for us to take up our limited amount of space and add inferior batteries when Tesla's already going to have the world's best batteries in it and lots of them. When you look at the power consumption of something like Cyberlander compared to moving the Cybertruck down the road at highway speeds, it's pretty minor. So you can go for a long time, especially in temperate conditions instead of extreme temperature conditions, and not affect the battery that much. But of course, we add the solar to minimize how much of the battery we use. And of course, if you're generating more electricity on those solar panels than you're actually using, then we'll pass it on to the Cybertruck to improve its range.
One other question would be, could I have the Cyberlander with the solar panel extended, but the whole thing still folded up, so that way if I'm parked, I'm going for a hike, I don't need this big like, ooh, look at me, I'm a house, come try and smash the windows, and it would just be kind of absorbing or charging my truck?
That's a very common request, and we plan to support that. But again, that's dependent upon which interfaces Tesla gives us. If they'll let us go bi-directional through those power ports, the 110 and the 220 in the bed, that makes it easy. If it has to be plugged in to the recharge port, then that's a little different.
I promised someone I would ask you this question because when Jesse mentioned the power ports in the bed, the question I got was, well, how are these guys going to deal with the fact that the power ports are probably going to be in the bed, but yet Cyberlander will block them? And I was like, I don't know, maybe they'll have like a door or something, but we've got you here, so maybe you can help answer that.
Great question. If you look at the bed of the Cybertruck, it does flare out right as it gets to those plugs, and it gives you enough room to plug something in, even with the Cyberlander in, if you're good and you design it properly. So that's what we're planning to do.
We saw in the Rivian and a bunch of the other trucks as well, and Cybertruck is going to have it, the air ports, the compressed air. Will you be able to use that to your advantage in any way? Could that be used to like raise the Cyberlander up and down, or have you thought of that at all?
We have. We considered making it pneumatic. Pneumatics actually would have been a quick, easy way to do it. We could have easily ordered pneumatics and tied into that system and used it to raise and lower it. There are some challenges with pneumatics too. Over time, they'll leak, and you'd have to make a locking mechanism to hold it up even if it does leak. And we looked at some of those things and we said, you know what, we think electrically operated is the right way to go. And so we put our effort into doing that. And it was not as easy to solve it that way, but we think it was the right way to do it.
Would it be possible, and I'm saying probably further down the road, but just possible, to have the Cyberlander be a standalone little tiny house that you drive out in your Cybertruck and you say, all right, well, I'm going to come back with all my stuff that I'm going to have to put in the bed, and so you maybe roll it out and set it up as a little off-grid house with maybe a battery connection, or even dependent on the Cybertruck?
That's been a common request, either just for at home so that they can have a guest room when somebody comes to visit, or as a little trailer so it could be used with other vehicles, or so that they could still access the bed of the truck. And so that's something we're working on. We don't know exactly how large the demand is for that yet, but it looks like it might be significant enough to make it worthwhile to do the engineering for something like that. So stay tuned.
Will there be space in the Cyberlander to put some bags or something, or, a fishing rod, and then lower it and go on your trip? And then when you get there, you raise it up and you walk in and you get those bags out. Like, is there any room left over for storage?
There's very little space left over. We're trying to use every cubic centimeter of space inside there. There will be some storage. Obviously, you can put stuff in the refrigerator, and you've got the frunk. And we anticipate the frunk will be very large. And then, of course, the cab, as a crew cab truck, has lots of space in it because there's no hump in the floor for drive lines and that. There's even more space. I would guess there's probably some underneath the rear seats. And so I think people will find that they're not as challenged for space as they might think. And we may even develop a few products to help maximize their use of that space.
And then I think then the question is, well, if there isn't going to be much space when the thing is closed, do I need to worry that I inadvertently left something out that is now going to either get
smushed,
crushed
right?
or cause the Cyberlander to blow up? Have you thought of that?
Oh, of course. That was the first thing we considered. And that's why we use AI so heavily, right? And we have a very powerful AI processor on board so that we can tell, are the windows closed? Is there anything on the countertop that needs to be removed? Have the chairs been stowed properly? We want to make sure it's safe and that you're not breaking things when you deploy and store your Cyberlander.
All right, so you've gone and visited Sandy. It sounds like he was pretty impressed. There's a picture of you with Sandy Monroe. Are you guys going to be going back to Monroe and Associates when it's time to start production for them to give you advice on actual, the production process, which they're kind of experts in?
Absolutely. The relationship is very close and getting closer all the time. We really enjoy working with them, and I think they enjoy working with us as well. It's a great collaboration. And so, Sandy said, there's really not much we can help you with on the design phase now. You guys have nailed this. And so we're pretty well through the design and transitioning to that manufacturing production process. And yes, they'll be able to add tremendous value for us as we go through that process to help get us up to full production more rapidly and to make sure we're getting the quality that we're looking for. So we expect to have them very much involved right up through production.
And speaking of production, you said you're going to make it in Texas. Are you going to be looking for factory space to rent? Are you going to be buying some factory space? And how big a factory do you think you need?
So what we're really looking for is about 150,000 square feet. That was the recommendation from Monroe and Associates. Our napkin scratching put us at just over 100,000, and they admitted 150,000 is probably a little generous, but they're confident we'll find a way to use the space. And we think that's wise. So we're planning for about 150,000 square feet. We're looking at existing. There are a number of there's very little space available right now in Austin, but there are a number of places that are being constructed that will be ready this year. We're looking at some of those. We're also looking at potentially building. A lot of that will depend on how much we get in investment and what they like. Venture capitalists typically don't like to see capital investments, but other investors do like to see something. They'd like to see assets. And so part of that depends on the investors and the amount of money that we end up bringing in.
And speaking of investment, so this first round, hopefully, if everything goes perfectly right, you'd get to $5 million on the crowdfund round. What do you think you're going to be needing that money for?
Our commitment with Start Engine is that money will be used to bring Cyberlander to market, to pay for the ongoing development and testing of Cyberlander. And so that's what we'll be using that for.
You're making kind of the most innovative camper in the world. When do you think you're going to start to get the calls from Winnebago and, Thor and maybe even Tesla? And they say, we'd like to acquire you and all of your technology and your team. And
we can't talk about that.
We want you to buy. We want to buy your company. I mean, what are you going to? What would you say to them if you got that call tomorrow?
We're open to all possibilities, but we're not planning or counting on any of those. We are laser focused on making Cyberlander the best it can be and bringing it to market in time for the Cybertruck to come to market. So, we're open to all kinds of things. We get asked, do you want to do an IPO on the NASDAQ? Are you looking for a SPAC? Are you looking for private equity? What are you looking for? What we found is self-selection works the best. So far, every employee we've got came to us and they were passionate about being part of it. And it just so happens that most of them showed up right at the time we needed their skill anyway. And so we're pretty confident that the right opportunities will present themselves when the time is right.
So for viewers who are watching who might be interested in Cyberlander, they can go to your website. For those who are interested in possibly investing, where should they go?
So investors can go to startengine.com/Cyberlander. And they can invest up to $500,000, as little as $400, or up to $500,000. And our promotion on Start Engine is if you invest $500 or more, then you get a $50 gift certificate for some merchandise from our website, whether that's a t-shirt or hat or something like that. If you invest $1,000 or more, in addition to that merchandise, you get 10% of whatever you invest off of the price of a Cyberlander. So if you were to invest $500,000, you can get a free Cyberlander.
Lance, if people want to see new features or like a prototype in action, is that coming out anytime soon?
You bet. You know, the best way to stay up to date is to actually reserve a Cyberlander, because we'll email our reservation holders with information first. And about that same time, we'll usually do a press release. And then in the days after that, you'll usually see it there or through our social media. So, of course, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. So you can follow us any of those different ways as well. And March will be a fun month. We're planning to release some video of our latest prototype, showing some of the functional things. For example, one of the things people said was impossible was an invisible induction cooktop that cooked through the porcelain countertop. And so we'll be showing that actually working. And so we're excited to start showing some of the hard work that we've been putting in.
So thank you so much for being with us today, Lance. I'm looking forward to our call with you and our investor club. If you want to join that, head on over to patreon.com/nowyouknow. We'll be having Lance there very soon. And I'm looking forward to that because I think we can get into even more nitty gritty.
Awesome. Great to see both of you again, Zach and Jesse. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much for watching the Disruptive Investing channel. We really appreciate your views. Please consider giving this video a like, and also please consider thanking our Patreon supporters who made this video possible. Again, I don't know why YouTube doesn't want you to hear about an American company making an American-made and designed product.
Right, because we asked,
it right in Austin.
We asked Lance, you could make this in China. He said, no, we're going to make it in Texas. I mean, and so now YouTube doesn't want you to hear about that? Like, weird.
So again, thank you to our Patreon supporters who made this timely video possible. We would have had to delay this probably weeks and weeks while we waited to hear back from YouTube as to whether or not we could make the money back from the editing that we already did back from this video. So thank you so much to everyone on Patreon for allowing us to make content like this, regardless of whatever a Silicon Valley company, its algorithm does. I really appreciate everyone over on our Patreon.
I mean, we've worked for this Silicon Valley company for 6 years, and then all of a sudden they just go like, here's a blanket algorithm, so here's a letter, you're getting demonetized.
And we don't know what it's for.
No.
So I really appreciate everyone supporting us, because otherwise this video wouldn't be possible. We'll see you next time. Hopefully we'll be monetized by then. We don't have to, be whining and complaining about YouTube, but such is the life of a YouTuber, unfortunately. Thank you so much for watching Disruptive Investing.